You run your thumb along the crumbling corner of your foundation. You feel the grit come loose, and you wonder why the ground under your feet costs more to hold together every single year. Now picture a bucket of plain sand and a jug of vinegar turning into something that outlasts the house you're standing in. Not a trick, not a gimmick. A chemistry the Romans knew, the coastal builders knew, and the Amish never forgot. Here's the claim I'm going to prove to you today. There is a way to bind loose sand into a solid, water-shedding, crack-healing mass for the price of $1's worth of common ingredients, and it has been sitting in plain sight for 2,000 years. The Amish families I came to know in Lancaster County never called it a secret. To them, it was just how you make something last. That's why it survived out there while the rest of us forgot it. And before we're done, I'm going to walk you through a technique tied to a fort built in 1672 that absorbed cannonballs like a knife going into cheese. The kind of thing you can test on a weekend with a bucket. And no, this isn't only for people pouring a new slab. If you already own a home, especially an older one, this is going to matter to you more than anyone. Let me tell you where my skepticism died. The first time I stood inside a stone-walled Amish cellar near Gordonville, Pennsylvania, I put my hand flat against the wall, expecting it to be cold and damp. It was dry, bone dry. 140 years old, no sump pump, no sealant, no vapor barrier, and the mortar between those stones was harder than the concrete on my own patio that was cracking after 12 years. I stood there feeling like a fool, because I had spent my whole life paying good money for materials that failed faster than something a farmer mixed by hand before the Civil War. I asked the old man who owned it what was in the mortar. He shrugged and said one word, lime. Then he said something I didn't understand at the time. He said, "The good stuff heals itself." I thought he was pulling my leg. He wasn't, and it took a team of scientists at one of the most respected universities in the world to prove that old farmer right. So let me start where the whole story starts, Rome. You've probably heard that Roman concrete is somehow better than ours. That gets thrown around a lot. But most people have no idea what that actually means, and the real answer is stranger than the myth. The Pantheon in Rome still stands, still intact, nearly 2,000 years after it was poured. To this day, it holds the record for the largest unreinforced concrete dome on Earth. No steel rebar, no modern additives, a dome that has outlived every empire that tried to copy it. Now here's the part that should bother you. Modern concrete, the stuff in your driveway and your basement floor, starts breaking down in 50 to 100 years. Some of it fails in 30. We put steel inside it to hold it together, and that steel rusts, swells, and cracks the concrete from the inside out. We built a material that destroys itself. The Romans built one that repairs itself. And for centuries we told ourselves they were just lucky, or that they had special volcanic ash we don't have. That excuse died in 2023. A team led by a materials scientist named Admir Masick at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, working with an engineer named Linda Seymour, took 2,000-year-old chunks of Roman concrete from an archaeological site called Privernum in Italy and put them under electron microscopes. For years, everybody had noticed little white lumps scattered through Roman concrete, little chunks of lime, and every expert assumed those white lumps were mistakes, sloppy mixing, a sign the Romans were careless. Masick didn't buy it. He asked a simple question: why would people who obsessed over every detail of their recipe for centuries suddenly get lazy at the last step? There had to be more to it, and there was. Those white lumps weren't mistakes, they were the whole secret. The Romans weren't gently mixing their lime the careful way we were told. They were using quicklime and mixing it hot at extreme temperatures in a process the MIT team called hot mixing. And that hot mixing left those little reactive lime clasts scattered all through the stone like seeds waiting for rain. Here's what those seeds do. When a crack forms in the concrete, and cracks always form, water finds its way in. That water hits one of those little lime lumps and dissolves it into a calcium-rich solution. That solution flows into the crack, and as it dries, it hardens back into solid calcium carbonate. Into new stone, the crack seals itself shut before it can spread. The wall heals like living skin. The MIT team didn't just theorize this. They made concrete both ways, the Roman way and the modern way, cracked both samples, and ran water through them. The Roman-style concrete sealed its own crack completely within 2 weeks. The modern sample stayed cracked, stayed broken, just like your driveway. Now sit with that for a second. The old farmer in Gordonville told me his mortar heals itself, and I smiled politely and thought he was exaggerating. A year later, I read that some of the smartest engineers alive had proven the exact same thing under a microscope. He didn't have a laboratory. He had a father who had a father who had a father who never let the knowledge go. But here's the tension I want you to hold on to, because it only gets deeper from here. If this material is cheaper, lasts 10 times longer, and repairs its own cracks, then the obvious question is the one that title asked you. Why isn't every house in America built this way? Why did we trade a 2,000-year material for one that fails in 30? Hold that question. Because the answer involves who makes money when your foundation crumbles. And we're going to get there. First, I need to show you that the Romans weren't the only ones. Because if it were just one ancient civilization, you could call it a fluke. It wasn't a fluke. It was everywhere people paid attention. Come with me to the coast of the American South. If you drive through the old parts of coastal Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida, you'll find buildings made of a strange gray material full of seashells. The locals call it tabby. And most people walk right past 300-year-old walls without realizing what they're looking at. Tabby is a concrete made from almost nothing. Oyster shells, sand, water, and lime that was itself made by burning more oyster shells. That's it. Poor people's concrete, made from the trash of the seafood they ate, and it's still standing after 300 years. The Spanish were building with it in Florida as far back as the 16th century. The British picked it up in the Carolinas and Georgia. Enslaved craftsmen whose skill history almost erased poured these walls by hand, layer by layer, 2 to 3 feet at a time, no steel. No Portland cement, which hadn't even been invented yet, just shells and lime and patience, and those walls shrugged off hurricanes that flattened newer buildings around them. Now, let me tell you about the single most stubborn building in America. Down in St. Augustine, Florida, there's a fort called the Castillo de San Marcos. Construction started in 1672. It's built from a shell stone called coquina, quarried from nearby Anastasia Island. Coquina is basically ancient seashells cemented together by nature into a soft, porous rock. And when the Spanish built a fort out of it, they accidentally created something no cannon on earth could break. When the English laid siege and fired their cannons at those walls, something impossible happened. The cannonballs didn't shatter the stone, the walls absorbed them. The soft, porous shell rock just swallowed the iron balls the way you'd push a knife into a block of cheese. The walls compressed, closed around the impact, and held. Attackers stood there dumbfounded, watching their most powerful weapons get eaten by a wall made of seashells. Think about the title of this video, Harder Than Steel. Here's the honest truth. This stone wasn't harder than an iron cannonball in the way you'd measure with a scratch test. It was something better. It was tougher. It survived what shattered iron. The cannonballs were the hard thing, and the cannonballs lost. Scientists finally solved exactly why in 2015, and it came down to those microscopic air pockets acting like a shock absorber. Steel is strong until it's stressed the wrong way and it snaps. This shell stone bent the rules. It endured. So now we've got the Romans, the coastal builders, and a Spanish fort, all using the same basic magic. Calcium, lime, shells, sand. The cheapest materials on the planet, assembled with knowledge instead of money. Which finally brings us to the vinegar and to the question of what's really going on when people say $1 of vinegar can turn sand into stone. Let me explain the chemistry in plain English, because once you understand it, you'll never look at your kitchen the same way. Vinegar is acetic acid. Seashells, eggshells, limestone, and agricultural lime are all mostly calcium carbonate. When you drop a shell into vinegar, it fizzes. That fizz is the acid dissolving the calcium and releasing carbon dioxide. What you're left with is a clear liquid full of dissolved calcium called calcium acetate. Now here's the beautiful part. That dissolved calcium wants to become stone again. When that liquid soaks into sand and slowly dries, and the calcium meets the carbon dioxide in the air, it turns back into solid calcium carbonate. Right there, in between the grains of sand, it regrows limestone, it cements those loose grains into a solid mass. The exact same way nature cemented the seashells in that Florida fort, you are, in your own backyard, doing in a bucket what the ocean does over 1,000 years. That's the honest heart of the vinegar trick. Vinegar alone poured on dry beach sand won't do much, and I won't lie to you and say it will. The real power comes from using that cheap acid to unlock calcium out of shells and lime, then letting that calcium reform as stone. $1 of vinegar, a pile of eggshells you were going to throw away, and sand. That's the whole shopping list. And this is exactly the point where I need to hand you something, because you've been patient and you've earned it. Everything I've just described, the hot lime healing of the Romans, the shell and lime tabby of the coast, the calcium acetate trick with vinegar and eggshells, these are pieces of a much larger body of knowledge that the Amish and the old builders kept whole while the rest of us let it scatter. I spent 2 years writing it all down, the exact ratios, the heating methods, the seasonal timing, into a 3-volume collection I call the Complete Field Vault. It holds the heating systems, the cooling methods, the root cellar pantry formulas, the natural pest control, and the off-grid systems that these families still use today. Right now, there's a limited time offer on it. It's linked in the description, and you can scan the QR code on your screen. What you just learned about calcium and sand is 1 page. The vault is the rest of the buried archive. Now let's get back to it, because I promised you the villain, and it's time you met him. If this knowledge is so good, so cheap, and so durable, somebody had to benefit from you forgetting it, and somebody did. Go back about 150 years. For most of American history, if you wanted to build something to last, you used lime mortar, lime plaster, lime whitewash. It was made locally, in local kilns, by local people, from local stone. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the heart of Amish country, there were once nearly 500 lime kilns dotting the landscape. 500. Stone towers where farmers burned limestone into the binder that held their world together. Today, fewer than 20% of them still stand. Most people driving past the ruins have no idea what they were even for. That lime did everything. The farmers made whitewash out of it and painted it on their barns and even on the trunks of their fruit trees. And here's a detail that stopped me cold. They whitewashed the tree trunks not for looks, but because that lime coating protected the bark from the brutal swings of hot and cold, and it actually increased their fruit yields. That's not decoration. That's chemistry as medicine for a tree. These people understood materials in a way we simply don't anymore. So what happened? Why did we all stop? In the 1800s, a new material came along called Portland cement. And Portland cement had one advantage that had nothing to do with quality. It was fast. It set hard in hours instead of curing slowly over months and years the way lime does. In a country in a hurry to build, fast beat good. Factories could make it in enormous quantities and ship it anywhere. You couldn't ship a local lime kiln, but you could sell a bag of cement to every hardware store in America. And so an industry was born, an industry that needed you to buy a bag and then buy another bag when the first one cracked. Lime that heals itself and lasts 300 years is a terrible business model. A material that fails in 30 years and forces you to hire a contractor to jackhammer it out and pour new, that is a wonderful business model. For them, I'm not telling you Portland cement is useless, it has its place. What I'm telling you is that we didn't abandon the older, tougher, self-healing way because it was worse. We abandoned it because it was harder to sell. Slow doesn't move product, durable doesn't create repeat customers, and a farmer who can burn his own lime and mix his own mortar doesn't need to buy anything from anybody. That independence is exactly what got engineered out of American life, one convenient bag at a time. The Amish never took that bait. That's the whole thing. They watched the modern world trade durability for speed and dependence, and they quietly kept doing it the old way. Not because they were stubborn, though they can be, because they'd done the math generations ago. Why buy what you can make? Why replace what can heal itself? Now, if you already own a house, and you're sitting there thinking this only applies to people building something new from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. Especially if your home was built before 1980, you are sitting on an opportunity most people don't even know exists. Older homes, the solid ones, were very often built with lime-based mortar and lime plaster, the breathable kind. And here is the mistake that has cost homeowners a fortune. When that old lime mortar starts to weather, well-meaning people, and worse, hired contractors come along and repoint it with modern Portland cement, and that is like putting a plastic bag over a wound. Old lime walls breathe. They let moisture move through them and dry out. When you smear hard modern cement over them, you trap that moisture inside, and the wall starts to rot and spall from the inside. You didn't fix your old house, you suffocated it. Millions of beautiful old brick and stone homes have been slowly destroyed by exactly this well-intentioned repair. So here's what you can actually do this month without a permit and without a contractor. First, if you have an older masonry home, learn to recognize soft lime mortar. You can scratch it with a key or a screwdriver, and it's a softer, sandier gray than the rock-hard modern stuff. If that's what you've got, you repoint it with lime mortar, not cement. Same material it was born with. It will bond, it will breathe, and it will last another century. Second, lime wash. Real lime wash is nothing but lime and water, and it's one of the oldest coatings on Earth, the same whitewash those Lancaster farmers brushed on their barns. You can brush it right over old masonry, old plaster, even over most existing surfaces. It's breathable, it naturally resists mold and mildew because it's alkaline, and it soaks into the surface and hardens into a thin layer of, you guessed it, calcium carbonate. Stone. You are painting your walls with liquid stone that gets harder every year as it pulls carbon dioxide out of the air. A gallon of it costs almost nothing to mix yourself. Third, and this is the one you can play with this weekend to prove the whole thing to yourself before you trust it on your house. Save your eggshells, crush them fine, cover them with cheap white vinegar, and let them sit until the fizzing stops, a day or two. You've just made calcium acetate, that calcium-rich liquid I told you about. Now mix that liquid into clean, fine sand, pack it tight into a small mold, a yogurt cup works, and set it somewhere dry and airy. Give it time. As it dries and breathes, the calcium recrystallizes as stone between the grains, and you'll pop out a hard little puck of sandstone you made from garbage and $1 of vinegar. Hold that in your hand once, and you will finally believe every word of this. That's the proof of concept the whole video is built on. But it is not the finale, because a little eggshell puck is a parlor trick compared to what the researchers have figured out about doing this at real structural scale. And that is where I've been leading you this whole time. So here it is, the thing I most wanted you to hear, the reason to have stayed to the end. Everything we've talked about, the Roman lime, the coastal shells, the vinegar and eggshells, is humans copying a process that certain living things do naturally. Coral does it, seashells do it. They pull calcium out of their surroundings and grow themselves a home made of solid stone. And in the last 2 decades, scientists asked a wild question. What if we could get that process to happen in loose sand, on demand, at building scale? What if we could grow stone instead of burning and mixing it? They found the answer in the ground beneath our feet. There's a common soil bacterium. Its scientific name is Sporosarcina pasteurei, and it has a remarkable talent. When you feed it a little urea and a source of calcium, it triggers a reaction that produces solid calcium carbonate crystals. And those crystals form right at the contact points between grains of sand, gluing them together into stone. The scientists call the whole process microbially induced calcite precipitation. Forget the fancy name. What it means is this. You can pour a bacterial solution into a column of plain, loose sand, wait, and pull out solid rock. No heat, no cement, no factory. You grow it the way you'd grow a crystal in a school science experiment, except the result can hold up a building. And the numbers are not small. Researchers have taken loose sand, the kind that runs through your fingers, and cemented it into material with real structural strength. One team pushed high-strength bioconcrete past 50 megapascals of compressive strength. To put that in plain terms, that's in the same league as the ordinary structural concrete holding up buildings and bridges right now, except this version was grown by bacteria out of sand instead of baked in a furnace. There's already a company that grows building bricks this way, from sand and bacteria, bricks that come out looking and performing like coral-hardened stone, made at room temperature with almost no carbon footprint. Now connect the dots all the way back. The Romans used reactive lime to regrow calcium carbonate and heal their cracks. The ocean used the same calcium carbonate to cement that Florida fort out of seashells. The Amish farmer's mortar heals itself with the very same chemistry. And the cutting edge of materials science in laboratories with electron microscopes is racing to do exactly what nature and those old builders were already doing. Growing stone from calcium. We didn't invent anything. We finally caught up. Here is the hero's journey of this whole story, laid bare. The knowledge existed for thousands of years, plain and cheap and available to anyone. Then it was pushed aside, not because it failed, but because a faster, more profitable product needed the market cleared. It survived in only a few places, in the ruins of Roman harbors, in the shell walls of the southern coast, and in the barns and cellars and mortar of plain communities who simply refused to forget. And now, because you sat here and listened, it's back in your hands. You can prove it this weekend with a bucket of sand, a bag of eggshells, and $1 of vinegar. You can protect your old house with a coating your great-grandfather would have recognized on sight. And you can look at every crumbling modern slab around you and finally understand exactly what was traded away and who profited from the trade. That's the thing I most wanted to give back to you today, because it was quietly taken. The simple, powerful truth that the strongest, longest-lasting things are often the cheapest, and that the reason you didn't know that has nothing to do with science and everything to do with who gets paid when you feel helpless. You are not helpless. You never were. You were just kept busy buying bags. If you're the kind of person who suspects that real, proven knowledge has been quietly shoved into a corner to protect somebody else's profit margin, then you already know what to do next. You felt it watching this. That itch that says, wait, why did nobody ever tell me this before? So, let me ask you something specific, and I actually want you to answer it. Think about that fort in St. Augustine, the walls that swallowed cannonballs like a knife into cheese. If a wall made of nothing but seashells and lime could do that in 1672, what does that tell you about everything you've been sold since? Tell me in the comments. And tell me one more thing while you're there. Do you have an old home built before 1980? With soft lime mortar in it that some contractor wanted to seal up with modern cement? I read these, and this audience needs to hear from the folks who've actually lived in these old houses. Don't just watch and leave. Leave a comment. Your story might be the thing that saves somebody else's home. And if you believe knowledge like this shouldn't die in a ruined lime kiln in Lancaster County, then join us. Subscribing to this channel isn't about helping me. It's about being part of a group of people who are digging this stuff back up, one buried technique at a time, and refusing to let it disappear again. There are more of us than you'd think. Because next time, I'm going to show you how those same Amish families keep a root cellar at a perfect, steady temperature all summer long, with no electricity, no compressor, and no power bill, using one principle about the earth that the utility companies would very much prefer. You never learn. It's simpler than the vinegar trick, and once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Stay with me. The archive is a lot bigger than one bucket of sand.